Number 3. This is the third Metaphor Refantazio cosplay that I've made for somebody. There's a fourth, but it doesn't exist yet in the YouTube metaverse. This also happens to be the biggest commission I have ever done. So what goes into making such a large project? We'll get to that, of course, but I think the main thing to take away is learning to look at a project in layers. A lot of thought goes into making big costumes like this, and of course, a lot of hours. How many hours? 142 this time. And that's if I count all of the 3D modeling time I did on the little bits that go on the jacket and the cape and stuff. But I can save you some time on that because I do have those 3D files available in my Ko-fi shop. So, how did I make Louis? Starting with the jacket. Whew, I'm out of breath before we even get started here. This is a lot of white fabric, and it's pretty heavy and wrinkly. You don't want to cut stuff on a wrinkly mess. And now I'll let you observe what using a blade until it falls apart looks like. Actually, it's not the blade, it's the dang cutter. I've gotten a new one since then. Now, you may have noticed this man's clothes defy gravity, so I'm gonna stiffen some parts with some interfacing. And now, assembling may begin. I like to assembly line everything that I can. Registration marks are important, of course, especially in weird shapes like these. If you bought my pattern, these bits might look a little bit weird. They are. And they're part of the facing pieces. To save on seams, you can absolutely combine these pieces into one depending on your fabric situation. Alright, that's as far as we can go. We have to sew all this stuff up now. The pile should look like this, and it has not yet reached its final form. The assembly continues. The stiffness of this fabric is what's really going to make this unruly. And then, well, you know, that stuff gets sewn. Moving on, I want to talk about presser foot pressure. And I'm not talking about feet picks here. See how this fabric can easily be pulled out? It's even easier while sewing. The dial on the side of my machine adds pressure to that, or less depending on what you need. Now, it's not going anywhere. Hi, yes, so I had to increase the pressure here because of how stiff the fabric is. It just had too much leverage and weight that it was pulling it to the side in the presser foot. But you might want to lower the pressure if you're sewing something like a stretch fabric to avoid it pushing stretch into the fabric as you're sewing. I'm sure I'll have examples in the future because I tend to sew with all kinds of different fabrics all the time. It's really situational, but sometimes that might be the solution to a problem you're facing with your fabric and your sewing machine. So the lining I let hang all night to get this bias stretch out of it, so now I have to cut away the excess. And once the shoulder seams are closed up, it's a great time to have an intrusive thought. Wouldn't it be cool to top stitch some cord into the seams? Yeah, you know, it'll mimic a bit of the cel-shaded feel from in the game. Did I have to do this? No, I did not. But does it look cool? Yes. Yes, it does. Now that the outer shell is ready, it's time to attach that facing to the lining. Again, if you got the pattern, you can seam this up normally, but I was in a mood to experiment for some reason, so I'm going to top stitch the facing to the lining. Both methods work, of course, and you'll see the other method in the Basilio jacket video, and again in the future in the stroll video, or so the magic orb says. Okay, but doesn't the transparency of the lining have such a cool effect? It makes me want to do that on purpose someday. I don't know for what, but I'll know it's when I sees it. Binding. Boning. Again, gravity-defying clothing. I need to sew in this binding tape in order to get the boning in, so hopefully it'll keep this thing floaty. Spoiler alert, it does not. But I did reduce the amount of flare the jacket has in the final pattern, so anyone who might be following along with this video and building along with it with my pattern, your gravity-defying abilities will probably be a lot easier than what I was facing while I was working on the project. The boning still stands, though. The issue really lies in that front opening not collapsing in on itself due to, well, you know, gravity. But don't worry, we'll get back to that later. There is a solution. Whew, the workout ain't over. Time to connect the lining to the outer layer. This area right here is a little subtle, so I'm marking the endpoint and the subtle curve. It's sometimes easier to just do this on the mannequin, or maybe a human. But this is not a human, so it's okay to do this. I'm serious when I say that even watching this footage back is a mental workout. It is a lot of fabric, a lot of heavy, stiff fabric. But damn, was it the right fabric for this project. Any cutout area needs to have the edges clipped and slashed in curves so they can nicely turn inside out. You should be able to go whamp like this. And now, the fun part. Now that my arms are nice and tired and sore, I don't work out. I should. All these freshly inside-out seams have to be pressed. We want crisp, not balloon. This thing needs a collar though, so no time to celebrate. Those little points help to know where to stop and pivot, by the way. And this gets clipped too. All those same steps. The edge that wasn't folded over gets clamped to the neckline, and this fabric doesn't ease very much, so I'm also clipping a bit into the seam allowance. Once sewn, you guessed it, baby, hand sewing. If you're new here and you guessed it, maybe you have an orb, or you sew yourself. I should probably explain this again sometime when you can, actually see. But I always bury the end of my thread between the fabric, and then I sew 3 times in the same spot to lock it in, and that way there's no clipped off end of thread that can be seen by anybody. Same thing in reverse at the end. For ease in putting this on, this jacket is getting a hidden zipper, hidden by many layers of things. Now, to line up those seams when zipped, I shove pins where things are supposed to align. So if that metal bit aligns here, all is good. And this would be a great time to reduce that presser foot pressure. Success. Mwah, beautiful. Remember my mention of layers of things? These shoulders need to later support a heavy cape, so I'm adding buckram to the inside. I don't want these edges to flop all over. My trusty Gutermann glue will do the trick. For anyone here just chillin' and not here to learn or follow along, I go more in depth on projects with patterns available. That way it serves as some kind of instructions, since I don't really have time to draw out instructions. We say goodbye to the lining here in the buckram area, and the fashion fabric gets notched and glued inwards to the buckram. If there's anything I learned from Metaphor Refantazio, it's that they like weird sleeves. Sleeves so weird that I had to change the design a little bit, and you'll thank me for that. Just trust. I have to add a little slit here in order to open it up into a triangle. Otherwise, the arms will not be able to go up. And you need your arms to go up. There's multiple ways to go about this, but I'm just top stitching the triangle on here so that it seems more deliberate and design-based. Sometimes it's best to double down rather than try to hide something. And now, the sleeve can be closed up. And thank you to everyone on Twitch who came along in this sleeve patterning journey for this boy. The lining's the same, and I can now baste it in there. This tube is the cuff. One edge ironed inward, sewn on, pulled out, folded inwards, and now it can be, dear God.
They do move and hurt.
So this is how it's going to connect. It only needs to be seamed up to the notched area. And you can tell by my stance here that this was a lot of fun to do. It was very relaxing, and the buckram was not in my way at all. Nah, it wasn't that bad, though. And the top half, you might ask? That's right. So the zipper will be hidden by the thing that's meant to be the thing closing this jacket up. But I'm not convinced that Crystal would feel like buttoning a million buttons. So Velcro it is. I think these small tubes are belt loops, by the way. They probably should have gone on before the lining was connected. Or not. Doesn't really matter. It's up to you. One day, when I catch up on the backlog, I'll know what the heck it is that I'm looking at. Hopefully at all times, too. The aforementioned buttons now require faux holes, folds. I want the stitching to look dense and pretty, even though these holes will not be opened. So, tests first. First one. Now, to Goldilocks that shiz and get the right setting. Now the buttons. I'm doing some fabric-covered buttons. Seems to be the theme around here. More to come. Orb and all. I didn't have the right size receiver pit thing, so a little strip of foam solved that. A strip of foam solved my rotary cutter for a long time too. And now, the obvious next step. I try not to exposition dump too much, but it's really hard not to. What would I talk about? I don't do anything other than sit at that desk and make costumes all day. Let me know in the comments if I overexplain. I will have to explain this though. This is an invisible stitch, ladder stitch, Batman stitch. Thank you. Oh, I almost forgot. You basically sew parallel and go straight across. Again, I'll have to show you this sometime on not a giant pile of white, which is, you know, what this whole costume is. I wasn't sure how I wanted to stick the other side on, but since there's a zipper, this thing is going to experience little to no resistance. So, more Gutermann. The receiving Velcro was also Gutermanned. Ready for the next layer? Let's take a look-see at Louis. He has some kind of leather backplate thing, but I don't think it's supposed to go all the way around. For us, though, it will. But why? We need a viable way later on to attach the chest plate, and a viable way to attach the ginormous cape that's going to be stacked on top of this build later on. And with the size of that thing, I don't want anybody getting choked by any capes, especially not when you're trying to look cool in the wind. So having the harness go all the way around, we accomplish a sturdy piece with the weight distribution going all the way around to attach both the chest plate and the cape to, you know, magic. The inner lining is just some black fabric that'll make a comeback in the Morrigan video. And of course, some brown couch vinyl for the outside. Ends first, some clipping, and some more pins. Some triangles for the inner curve. A protective piece of fabric so that we can iron things open. And now to connect the lining. Of course, leaving an opening for the straps and a zipper. I believe this little area is left open to add boning into the back. Once everything is nice and smoothly ironed, it's time to get to that zipper. You can make a longer zipper into a shorter zipper if need be. You just gotta lock up the edge so that the cursor can't fly off. Oh, and make sure the cursor's on the right side. A little decorative triple stitch all the way around. That's right, I'm not doing it by hand. But if you had an orb... I said boning earlier, but zip tie will do. What this does is it just keeps the fabric from collapsing when it's laced. Zip in the front, but lace in the back so that can still be adjusted. Trust me, this thing is sturdy as hell. For the cape, Junk will be inspecting to making sure everything is up to par. This pattern will not be included, but don't worry, I'll show you guys what the final shape ended up looking like. It's a lot of measuring, draping, thinking. The neckline came first. Junk supervises the rounding of the top, and then a side extension piece that looks like this. To avoid too much weight, and also due to lack of enough fabric, the lining will be this. But it too will get a facing. Could I have just done one layer for the cape? Yeah, sure. And I'm not sure there's a good reason why I didn't. But not really, there's going to be darts in this and a lot of weird curves in a fabric that has no ease. So lining it is just a cleaner approach because I'm going to have to clip things. Speaking of darts, this thing has to drape over the weird shaped shoulders, remember them? And this is the least amount of seams way I've found of doing it. Once the darts are done, the cape pattern should look something like this. I hope that's helpful. The sides are sewn on. It should look like this. And then connect the lining. Tomorrow. Now that we're tomorrow, the seams get ironed open before said turned inside outage. Which will look like someone trying to fold a fitted sheet before deciding to just bundle it up. And now to close the opening, our newfound friend from earlier, the Batman stitch, makes a comeback. And no one will ever know how the heck this thing got turned inside out. Whoa, it's like magic, dude. So yeah, anyways, now to add the snap to the cape and the harness. And believe you me, I have anxiety just watching this clip. Don't know if you remember that whole thing about my downstairs neighbors looking like the people from Weapons, just standing there, broomstick in hand, for hours on end, waiting to be triggered by the sound of one singular strike of the hammer. Might as well keep this brown couch vinyl out for the belt. I'm setting this little strip aside, drawing a center line, and then of course, if you had x-ray vision, this is what you'd see. And yep, hot glue. I've focused the glue away from the edges though, since I'm going to be sewing them. I'm leaving this at normal speed too, so you can see how fast I do a triple stitch. I could go faster, but I find my machine has more precision when I do it at this speed. Now the belt too will be a sneaky Velcro closure for speed and ease. I had forgotten about that, so I'm just going to be pulling up some of that glued strip to avoid stitching showing up where I don't want it, and the aesthetic eyelets too. And now Clamp City here is probably holding some Gutermann glue down. Now the rest of the top stitching can continue. As for the belt buckle, I modeled and printed this one to match the reference. I gave it a bit of paint. And this is how it goes on the belt. Remember the cape from Hulkenberg? Well, now I have to make the Turbo Mega version for Louis. Luckily, I was able to use the Hulkenberg one, add to it, rearrange it, so patterning went well. And luckily, the fabric collection hadn't changed yet, so I was actually able to get the exact same fabric as Hulkenberg in white. Love a little continuity, baby. Gotta test my disappearing ink on this fabric though, and we have a go. Now, I do apologize for the white on white on white this project, but these little squares are iron-on interfacing for the spade cutouts. Of course, there goes the disappearing ink, so assembly. Let's go. The shoulders, I like to pin on each end and then the middle at the seam. That way you can get a better idea of where to slash. Even on fabrics that do have ease, slashing the seam allowance is helpful in curves like these regardless. Like the Hulkenberg one, the edge has to be crispy and strong, so I'm going to go ahead and iron this. And also glue it down. And now the lining, same fabric. And this is how I pin it together. Here comes the fun part, of course, clipping and slashing. Now the last time I made this type of cape, I did the seam allowances too large, and I had already cut the dang excess away, so I had to restart the entire thing. Luckily, this time all was good. After ironing, a nice top stitching to seal the deal. Oh, and this thing also gets a collar. Louis is pretty extra, so he has extra looking stuff all over this thing, including this. My interpretation of what I was seeing involves clear vinyl, and luckily I can use this from Hulkenberg too, just inverse the color. So we can slap that bad boy on there, heat, peel, and then we can revisit the clear vinyl. Sewing this usually goes well, but it was being so strange this time around, and of course, I want the stitching to be even and nice, so when it starts struggling to move forward, that's not great. I ended up becoming the feed dogs for the machine and just advanced it at equal increments myself. And for anybody wondering, no, a walking foot would not have been the answer here. 1, they're super expensive and I don't own a Bernina walking foot. 2, not a huge fan of them in general. 3, this is a precision job and I need to see everything that's going on right there. Usually I'll end up using like a tearaway stabilizer that I can see through to glide the presser foot on top of, but I didn't really trust it being removed properly in this instance, and also I'm sewing on top of something that is clear, so I wouldn't be able to see anything through it. This worked just fine though. So it's weird, but it worked. You're right, this isn't Louis, but I was finally able to replace those curtains back there. Too on the nose with the design, you know? I already have the wallpaper with that kind of look. Also, Ken was worried about my stand on surfaces tactic, so I had a spotter. And this thing. Wow. I love it. No regrets. Oh, and it looks like this was before I was done building my enclosure for the P1P. This one, unlike Hulkenberg, has these golden panels inside of it, so I'm gonna bust out some 2mm foam. Oh, have you met the Pretty Privilege Gold yet? I don't think it's been used in video projects yet. Well, it's horrible to work with. It shifts everywhere, something bad. And it frays like crazy. And yeah, that was straight up craft time glue stick. But this right here is a only trust the agile kids with it glue gun. This isn't a job for the glue gun though, but another job for the trusty Guterman. Triple threat on the glue. Ooh, so what is Louis the man of many of? So we had Griffith, the man of many cuffs. We had Titus, the man of many shorts. We had the Ghoul, the man of many belts and holsters. Louis can be the man of many capes, perhaps. Part of me really wants to make him the man of many shoulder pads. I'm really torn because there is another addition to the cape. So it's making me lean towards man of many capes. But damn, does he give the 80s a run for its money. But yeah, here's some foam shoulder pads for his cape. That's some dollar store contact cement I felt like testing out. This isn't the contact cement test video though, that'll be its own thing. But once it's glued, I'm gonna score the inside, open it up with heat, and stick some Velcro in there. Because why? Cape things. Also, just in case this thing is ever visible, for whatever reason, epic gusts of wind presumably, I'm painting the outside white. And I'm using what glue? That's right. Look at that crispy fit. Why do I look so worried here? Probably at the thought of using that Pretty Privilege Gold again. One half of each side gets ironed on interfacing because it's very floppy. I make that both sides, actually. Bag line that sucker. Notch, flip, Velcro. It's segmented here because of the curve. And then the side capes connect to the second cape. And here's a cardboard cutout of Dwayne Boy. And that leads us to the chaps. Same satin as the cape, same lining as the jacket, middle seamed, pressed. Connected to the lining, notched, pressed. Inside outed, pressed. Starched, which also involves the iron. You ain't gonna stop seeing this iron anytime soon. White zipper, clamps, zipper foot. Wow. Cutting this bit here makes it so that it rolls inward when the zipper is turned outward. Pressed again. Top stitch. And why not add cord to this thing too? I'm just going to use some double cap rivets and some elastic for under the foot. And now we can get to something that isn't a pile of white. The chest plate. But there will be a pile of foam involved. I hate this so much. I prefer smaller pieces of foam, but I also don't want to break this one up. Because, yeah, what if I end up needing a semi-truck size piece of foam for something? Again, don't forget to sharpen your bullshit. So the chest plate has angled cuts. The top one here is to fit with the top plate later at an angle, and it becomes 90 degrees at the end. The edges are angled just for cleanliness purposes. Some pieces I feel benefit from it, some don't. Time for a little bevel here to bring a fold into the piece. But before I glue that together, there's more markings and lines needed. And now, a bird. I'm outlining this just so that I know how far to sand and know where to put glue later. These bits from the wing get shifted. 2mm for the bird. And now, time to step into the transparent cave. Everywhere I pass with that sanding drum, I also pass with a stone bit. And now, all these little bits get glued on. Before we head back to the translucent cave, or whatever I called it earlier, I'm going to shift the top portion of the chest plate. I'm going to be trying something new here in these foam adventures. So this has to be hollowed out. And after some top details go on, and I take care of my sanding on the to-do list, I'm going to cut out some 2mm backing for this hollowed out piece. Ooh, my god, I am horrible with the head and the frame on this one, guys. I should probably compensate one of these days by having the camera flipped around in like dad selfie mode by accident. Anyways, this can get connected now. The angle comes into play here. More sanding. Sanding is the ironing of foam smithing, by the way. A little attachment prep. And now, a mountain of quick seal. I'm going to be using quick seal this time to smooth out transitions, hide seams, and also smooth out the sanded areas on the chest plate, the wide ones. I always apply it and smooth it out with water. Now that that's drying, I have to do a little test with some clear resin. Yep, that's the experiment. Each of these tests have a different setup, and I'm hoping the resin will actually cure and no additional reactions will occur. While that sets a little 220 or 1000 grit sandpaper to the quick seal. Lightly. And in order to save money on, plasti dip, I've started watering down Mod Podge to do a couple layers as a base. And the results are in. The first one is 2 layers of Mod Podge followed by acrylic paint, followed by resin. No weird reactions, but it's not really stuck in there enough. This one is 2 Mod Podge, 1 paint, and 1 Mod Podge before resin. No weird reactions, and it's stuck in there. Definitely do tests with whatever resin you guys use, by the way. Just because mine works doesn't mean a different brand will also work. Our chest plate already has the Mod Podge layers, so let's go ahead and paint in that cloudy, swirly blue from Louie's chest plate. Probably one of the least aggressive paints out there is acrylic, so you have pretty good chances of no weird reactions occurring with acrylic paint. It was the Mod Podge and foam I was worried about. Once it's base coated, I'm going to build up layers that get lighter and lighter. Of course, another layer of Mod Podge was added on top. And now, the scary part. I did everything the exact same as the test. I let it sit overnight, and nah, I'm just messing with you, it was fine. Now look how cool that is. But I gotta mask it off now in order to finish priming and base coating the rest. Get a load of this guy. This is my porch. And this guy's out here acting like he owns the place. Screaming at me for wanting to go out there and do my spray stuff. What he doesn't know is I've got a guy of my own. This guy. Yeah, do a Michael Jackson and beat it, squirrel. Okay, so I could put this stuff at the end, but it's boring, so I'm going to put it right now in order of operations. In order to help the jacket defy gravity, as mentioned earlier, I'm going to make some saddlebag thingies. And you'll likely want to make these to prevent that center slit from collapsing. So once they're sewn up, I go ahead and fill them with polyfill. They're not like loaded with polyfill, just enough. You might want to do some tests. And when I was loading it with polyfill, I noticed there was a paper packaging in there. The original polyfill stuffing tool bears an interesting resemblance to generic takeout chopstick. As you know, I used to poke corners in things. Anyways, the bags get sewn onto a belt, and now a quick intermission.
Oh.
So I don't have a mic plugged in or anything right now, but I was ready to go to bed and I came to check on my printer and I noticed that nothing was coming out. And so yeah, it's my first clog. I got the clog out though, so it's okay. We can resume printing the stuff for Louie. Time to follow this video backwards to reassemble this now. I'm gonna skip to everything is printed, and now I gotta sand it all and get those pesky layer lines out of here. The shin one needs to bend at the top, and that's nothing a little heat can't handle. And the pieces are off to further priming and base coating. But don't worry, let's take the masking tape off the chest plate. But the rest of it is still flat, so I'm gonna have to use some oil paints to shade this up. I use my fingers a lot when working on things. I probably shouldn't, like, for instance, applying quick seal, smudging oil paint, a lack of gloves in general. But anyways, look how cool oil paint is when shading something like this. It's like a whole new piece. Onto the prints. You can obviously just spray these chrome, but I wanted them to match the belt buckle from earlier, so I'm doing it this way. I had gotten impatient with that belt buckle, I just wanted it on there. In hindsight, I'd probably wait before putting the belt buckle on. These also get a little bit of shading. And every piece had the bottom scratched up, by the way, in order to allow the glue to grip to both the piece and the fabric. Look how extra this guy is. He's got all this bling all over. Also, I am so proud of myself because I 3D modeled all of these, and I know next to nothing about 3D modeling. Now don't be alarmed, but I do have to stab a hole in this chest plate because this man also needs a gold chain looking thing strung across his chest. So, layer by layer, the jacket, the belt and harness, cape number 1, cape cluster of 3 capes, chest plate. In the end, I ended up braiding that gold cord and string it across bro's chest. That was something to work on. Like I said, the largest commission I have ever worked on so far. And I've worked on large personal projects, like, to name a few, we've got Darksiders projects, we've got Altair from Recreators, but Louis is probably the widest. The man certainly commands his space physically, and probably also in practice, just judging by, at first glance of the guy. First glance would actually be a lie, though, considering I have witnessed every facet of his wardrobe. Would I make this again? Yes, probably just because I already have the pattern, so I would probably just have to do a few alterations to the pattern so it would fit the client. But some things are best experienced once. No, I'm just kidding. It was a fun project to work on, and I think it turned out super cool, and the pictures turned out super cool. So I'd like to thank Crystal again for another super fun commission to work on. And speaking of thanks, I'd like to thank my Twitch subscribers. Your support is greatly appreciated as always. Love you guys a long time. And of course, if you want to make this yourself, or perhaps a couple other Metaphor characters, I have patterns on my Ko-fi shop. So I'll see you guys soon, hopefully. Some of you guys I'll see on the flip side. And by that, I don't mean Twitch.